She agreed to marry a dying stranger to fulfill his last wish, expecting a tragic one-night marriage and a small inheritance. But when she wakes up, she finds herself transformed into the vampire queen, magically bound by a 1,000-year contract to the powerful and dangerous immortal who orchestrated it all. The first time she saw him, she thought he was just another patient clinging to his last breath, not a king hiding an eternity of secrets behind tired eyes. Years later, when people whispered about the vampire queen and the 1,000-year contract, they never imagined it began in a small, overlit hospital room that smelled like disinfectant, cheap coffee, and quiet goodbyes. The night shift hallway was almost empty when Alina pushed the medicine cart toward room 304. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering every few seconds like they were trying to stay awake with her. She yawned, rubbed her sore eyes, and told herself she just had to make it until morning. One more dose here, a chart update there, then back to her tiny apartment where the ceiling leaked whenever it rained. It wasn't much of a life, but it was honest, and every patient she helped felt like a small win against the darkness she'd grown up in. Room 304 was marked, palliative care, no resuscitation. She paused with her hand on the doorknob, letting out a slow breath. These were always the hardest rooms, not because of death itself, but because of the silence that came after families left, when the machines beeped softly like they were trying to apologize. When she walked in, she expected the usual: pale skin, shallow breathing, a tired smile if the patient was awake. Instead, she found a young man sitting upright in bed, the heart monitor unplugged, hospital bracelet loose around his wrist like it didn't quite belong there. His hair fell in soft waves over his forehead, and his eyes, strangely bright for someone supposedly dying, shifted to her with a calm, focused attention that made her stop in the doorway. "You're late," he said gently, not accusing, just stating it like he already knew everything about her day. Alina blinked, glanced at the clock, and then at her chart. "Your medication isn't due for another 10 minutes. He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that felt like it carried a story behind it. "I didn't mean the medicine. I meant you. I have been waiting for you for a very long time." Her fingers tightened on the cart handle. Maybe he was confused. Morphine or whatever they had him on. She'd seen it 100 times. Patients mixing dreams with memories, past with present. "We haven't met before," she replied, forcing her voice to stay light. "I would remember you, Mr. Elias Ward." He tilted his head, the name sounding foreign to him, like he was trying on shoes that didn't quite fit. "That is what they call me here. It works well enough." His gaze softened when he looked at her ID badge. "Alina, your name means bright." Fitting. She shook her head with an awkward little laugh. "It usually means pays rent late and works extra shifts. But sure, bright works." She moved closer to check his vitals, noticing how cold the room felt compared to the corridor, like the air around him had its own temperature. No machines, no IV, no visible reason he should be in palliative care. "Are you in pain?" she asked carefully. "Not the kind you can write on your chart." He studied her face, as if searching for something. "Tell me, Alina, do you believe in promises?" "Nurses believe in protocols," she said automatically, but his question followed her like a shadow as she checked his pulse. It was steady, too steady. "What kind of promises?" "The last kind," he murmured. "The kind you make when you have nothing left to bargain with except the truth." Something in his voice made her look up. He didn't sound afraid of dying. If anything, he sounded tired of it, like this wasn't his first ending. Like he had seen too many. His eyes weren't the glassy, unfocused eyes she knew too well. They were sharp, old in a way that didn't match the lines of his face. "You don't look like you're dying," she said before she could stop herself. "Everyone is dying," he replied softly. "Some of us just have a clearer schedule." His lips twitched, almost amused. "Tonight is my last night as this." He gestured to the thin hospital gown, the cheap blanket, the weak human disguise. And I have a request, a selfish one." Alina frowned. "If it's about treatment, I can call the doctor." "No," his gaze didn't waver. "It's about a vow." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice dropped, the words settling between them like a quiet storm. "I would like you to marry me, tonight." For a heartbeat, all she heard was the faint buzzing of the light and the distant sound of someone pushing a mop down the corridor. Then she laughed, because what else could she do? "Okay, that's definitely the strongest painkiller talking. I'm calling psych." "I am not delirious." His tone stayed calm, but there was a fragile urgency underneath. "This is not a joke. There are legal papers ready, a significant inheritance in your name. You would be free of debt for the rest of your life. Your brother could study. Your mother could stop working nights. One night of your life in exchange for their future." Her heart stumbled. "How do you know about my family?" "I told you," he said simply. "I've been waiting for you." Alina stared at him, the room suddenly too small. It had to be some elaborate setup, a hidden camera show, a scam. Yet the seriousness in his eyes, the strange calm in his voice, the way he spoke about her loved ones like he had watched them from some distant window, it didn't feel like a prank. It felt like stepping onto thin ice without realizing how deep the water beneath was. "Why me?" she whispered, almost afraid of the answer. Elias' gaze softened with something like sorrow. "Because you are kind, even when no one is watching. Because you help people who can give you nothing back. Because every choice you have made, even the painful ones, was to protect someone else." His throat worked, as if he were swallowing down words he didn't trust himself to say. "Because this world breaks gentle people first, and I refuse to leave it without saving at least one." The sincerity in his tone hit her harder than any amount of money could. She thought of her mother's trembling hands from years of cleaning work. Her younger brother pretending he didn't see the disconnect notice taped to their door. The way she skipped meals to make their groceries last. The offer felt impossible, unreal, and yet painfully, beautifully tempting. "This is insane," she murmured. "People don't just marry strangers in hospital rooms." "They do when those strangers are running out of time," he said quietly. "And when the stranger has enough power to change everything for them, if they are willing to take a step into the unknown." She searched his face, trying to find any trace of cruelty, of hidden mockery. All she saw was an exhaustion that went beyond sickness, and a loneliness that felt like it had lived inside him for centuries. He wasn't just asking for a favor. He was asking for a witness, someone to stand next to him at the edge of whatever came next. "You said this is your last night as this," she said slowly. "What does that mean?" Elias held her gaze, the air in the room growing heavier, like it was waiting too. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but every word was crystal clear. "It means, Alina, that by dawn, I will no longer be pretending to be human." Her hand froze on the rail of his bed. For a moment, she thought she misheard. That exhaustion was playing tricks on her. But then the overhead light flickered again, casting a strange golden sheen in his eyes, and the temperature in the room dropped another degree, enough to make her breath turn faintly visible between them. He lifted his hand, palm up, an invitation and a warning at once. "You asked why you. I will tell you everything if you stay. But if you walk out now, this night will vanish like it never happened, and I will find another way. I will not hold it against you." His expression softened with something like admiration. "But if you stay, if you say yes, your life and mine will never belong to the shadows in the same way again." Alina looked at his offered hand, at the door behind her, at the silent night pressing against the window. Her heart pounded, caught between fear and a strange, dangerous hope, as she slowly reached out. And just as her fingers were about to touch his, the lights in the entire ward snapped off at once, plunging the room into darkness, and a deep, ancient voice she didn't recognize whispered from somewhere inside the shadows. "Your time as a dying man is over, my king. Choose your queen or lose your throne forever." The choice in the dark. For a few seconds, the darkness in the room didn't feel like a power cut. It felt alive. The monitors in the hallway went silent. The usual hospital noises, the soft beeping, distant voices, rolling wheels, faded into an eerie hush. Only Alina's breathing, sharp and shallow, broke the stillness as she stood frozen beside Elias' bed, her hand hovering over his. "Who said that?" she whispered, every nerve in her body on edge. A dim red glow flickered to life near the ceiling, like candlelight pushing through heavy fog. It wasn't coming from a lamp or emergency backup. It poured instead from a shape gathering in the far corner of the room, shadows folding in on themselves until they suggested the outline of a tall figure draped in something that looked older than any language Alina knew. "Do not be afraid," the voice said again, low and resonant, vibrating in her chest more than in her ears. "Fear is for the ones who do not understand. You, girl, are standing at a crossroads." Alina instinctively stepped in front of Elias, even though she barely understood what threatened him. Her heart hammered, but her voice came out steady. "If this is some twisted game, I'm calling security." "Security?" The silhouette seemed amused. "What will your guards do against 1,000 years of blood and oath?" "Enough." Elias' voice cut through the air, no longer the soft, tired tone of a patient, but something stronger, edged with authority. "You shouldn't be here yet." "I come when the balance demands it," the figure replied, shifting slightly. In that strange red glow, Alina could almost make out sharp, intelligent eyes, though the rest of its face stayed in shadow. "You hesitated, my king. The contract cannot be delayed." "My name," Elias said calmly, "is Elias. At least to her it is." He placed a hand gently on Alina's shoulder. His touch was cool but steady. "Alina, listen to me. What you are seeing, what you are hearing, none of this is a hallucination. You are not losing your mind." "That's exactly what someone in a hallucination would say," she muttered, but she didn't push his hand away. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Fair, but still it's true. The one speaking is an emissary, a steward of sorts. He represents the council of the Blood Throne." "I represent survival," the shadow corrected. "Yours and your people's. You carry the crown, Elias, but your time in this shell runs out at dawn. Without a bound queen, the throne will shatter. The clans will fall into war. The seas will drink fire. You know this." Alina stared between them, her mind racing. "Crown, throne, clans," she shook her head. "This is insane. You're a patient. This is a hospital. I give you meds, you sign forms, we all go home. That's how this works." But even as she said it, those words felt small and fragile. The air didn't smell like disinfectant anymore. It carried something colder, metallic, and ancient, like stone in a winter crypt. She realized her hands were trembling. Elias stepped down from the bed with a slow, controlled movement that didn't match an exhausted, dying man. The hospital gown hung loose on him, but he stood like someone used to armor and weight, like someone who had practiced control for centuries. "Alina," he said quietly, "the truth is simple, even if it sounds impossible. I am not dying from illness. I am letting this body go. It's a vessel I used to walk among humans without causing fear. At dawn, the old magic that binds our kind will reclaim me, and I will return to who I truly am." "A vampire," the shadow intoned, as if giving a title. "The rightful king of the night court, bound to rule for another 1,000 years. If—" the glowing eyes turned toward Alina again, assessing, measuring. "If a living heart chooses to share his burden." Alina swallowed, her throat dry. "You want me to marry you so I can, what, become a vampire too? Rule some secret underground kingdom, drink blood and wear capes?" Despite the tension, Elias' lips curved. "We don't all wear capes. Fashion has evolved." His smile faded as he returned to the point. "No, I did not choose you to turn you into a monster. That is the first half-truth you must stop believing. We are not monsters, at least not only that. We are also guardians of secrets, of borders between worlds, of the fragile peace that keeps humans from knowing how thin their safety really is. The emissary's form flickered as if agreeing. The marriage is not just ceremony. It is a contract between races. A human queen bound by oath and magic tempers the hunger of a vampire king. She anchors his power, reminds him of mercy, forces him to feel what mortals feel. His tone darkened. Without that anchor, the hunger wins, and when a king falls to hunger, empires fall with him. That is why you were chosen, Elias added softly. You are kind. You see people, not just cases. You talk to the lonely ones, even when the charts say they're beyond hope. Your empathy is not weakness, Alina. It is the one thing stronger than our curse. Alina's mind flashed through memories, holding the hand of a dying man whose family never visited, staying late to comfort a child after surgery, buying food for a homeless woman with her own last few bills. She had never thought of it as special. It was just what you did if you didn't want the world to get colder. This is too much, she whispered. You're asking me to, what, give up my whole life for a man I've known for 20 minutes? To believe in vampires and thrones and magic contracts because the lights went out and someone did a spooky voice impression. The emissary stepped closer, the red glow intensifying. She could feel cold air radiating from him, but it was a thoughtful cold, not cruel. You are not being asked to give up your life, he said. You are being offered a different one where your sacrifices finally matter on a scale larger than a single ward, a single neighborhood, one where your courage can save more than a chart number. Elias moved to stand in front of her, so close she could see faint red threads pulsing in the depths of his irises, hidden under their human color. I will not lie to you, he said. If you say yes, you will change, not into what I am, but into something rare, a bridge. You will see pain you cannot fix and beauty you never imagined. You will hold power that can help and hurt, and you will have to choose kindness every single day, even when it's hardest. And if I say no, she asked, her voice barely more than breath. A shadow of sorrow crossed his face. Then I will let you walk away. The inheritance will still be yours. Your family will be safe. I will find another, though time is short, and the choice may not fall on someone as deserving as you. War may still come, but your hands will be clean. The emissary tilted his head. Not quite. You will remember this night, whether you agree or not. You will remember that once you stood where the fate of thousands balanced on your answer. Clean hands do not always mean a clean conscience. The room felt heavier. Alina suddenly thought of all the nights she had gone home exhausted, wondering if any of it mattered. The idea that she could help more people, protect them from dangers they didn't even know existed, it was terrifying, and strangely, deeply appealing. Her eyes burned. I don't want power, I just want my family safe. I just want people to stop suffering for no reason. All true crowns are given to people who never wanted them, Elias said softly. That is what keeps them from turning cruel. Silence settled again. Her heart pounded in her ears. She looked at his offered hand, now haloed faintly by the red glow filling the room. She thought of her mother's tired smile, her brother's quiet dreams, her own endless night shifts. Slowly, her fingers curled, as if answering something deep inside her she didn't have the words for yet. I don't trust any of this, she said honestly. I don't trust you. I don't trust mysterious shadow men or ancient councils or magic contracts. Good, the emissary murmured. Trust is not given, it is built, brick by painful brick. But, she took a shaky breath, I trust myself. I trust that, wherever I am, I will try to do the right thing, even when it hurts. Elias' eyes glimmered with something that looked very close to relief. That is all I can ask. Her hand trembled, and then she placed it in his. The moment their skin touched, the floor seemed to drop away. A rush of cold, then warmth, then images, flashes sharper than thought flooded her senses. Moonlit castles perched on black cliffs, cities sleeping beneath thick layers of snow while red-eyed sentries watched from rooftops. A throne room carved into a mountain of obsidian, lit by thousands of floating lights and filled with faces. Fierce, beautiful, ancient, all turning toward a tall figure rising from a gilded throne. Elias, not in a hospital gown, but in dark, intricate armor that glowed faintly with crimson sigils. A crown, thin and sharp like a circlet of frozen fire, rested on his pale hair. His eyes, fully unleashed, shone like molten gold rimmed with red, and yet, behind all that power, she recognized something familiar. The same quiet sadness. The same longing for something gentle, something human. The vision shattered. She staggered back, gasping, the hospital room spinning. The emissary raised his hands, chanting in a language that felt older than the walls around them. Red light surged from the floor, tracing a circle around the bed. "It is begun," he intoned. "By witness of shadow and flame, by blood unspilled and oath unbroken, the contract awakens. The king is chosen. The queen has answered." Alina clutched the rail of the bed, overwhelmed. "Wait, I was that, did we just?" "We have only accepted the terms," Elias said, voice rough with emotion and something like awe. "The ceremony still waits. The dawn still waits. You still have time to change your mind, though it will cost us dearly." The emissary's gaze bore into her. "From this moment, Alina, every step you take carries weight in two worlds. Be certain, human girl, be very certain." And as the lights flickered once more, and the hospital's normal sounds began to leak back into the halls, Alina realized with a shiver that saying yes was not the end of her decision. It was only the beginning. The 1,000-year contract. The lights snapped back on with a harsh white glare, erasing the red glow as if someone had closed a curtain on another reality. The heart monitors in nearby rooms resumed beeping. A nurse's laugh echoed faintly down the hallway. Somewhere, a cart rattled over a floor crack like nothing unusual had happened. But inside room 304, the air still thrummed with something invisible and heavy, like the room remembered what it had just witnessed. The emissary's form thinned, shadows pulling back into the corner. Without the red light, he looked less like a figure and more like a darker patch of air, yet his presence remained undeniable. "Time moves differently now," he said, "for you both." Alina's knees felt weak. She sat down hard on the visitor's chair, the plastic squeaking under her weight. "You said I still have time to change my mind," she managed. "How much time exactly?" "Until the first ray of sun touches his true form," the emissary replied. "When that happens, the choice hardens. The contract seals. 1,000 years will answer to what you decide tonight." 1,000 years, she repeated, the number tasting absurd and enormous in her mouth. "That's just symbolic, right? Like a fairy tale thing. You can't actually mean." "We measure time in longer breaths than you," the emissary said calmly. "But yes, for him it will be 1,000 more years of rule. For you, the years will come differently. You will not be frozen. You will not be denied your mortality. But your life will stretch, lengthened and sheltered by his bond, until your heart chooses its final rest. You will live many human lifetimes or one very long one. That is part of the burden." Alina pressed her hands to her face, trying to steady her thoughts. Immortality had always sounded like something from movies, not a real calendar problem. "So I get extra years, like a phone plan extension." Her voice shook with nervous humor. "What's the catch?" Elias watched her closely, his expression serious. "The catch is responsibility. You won't just live longer. You'll carry more. You'll see wars begin and end. You'll watch children grow into grandparents. You'll have to choose again and again not to turn cold, not to stop caring because pain keeps coming." "And if I do turn cold?" she asked quietly, dropping her hands. "If all this weight breaks me?" "Then," the emissary said, "the king will fall with you. You are anchor and mirror. If you choose cruelty, he will taste it. If you numb yourself, his heart will harden. The throne will follow your lead. That is why your kindness matters more than your courage." Alina looked at Elias, searching his face. "Why would you risk that? Why put your whole kingdom in the hands of someone who burns toast and forgets where she put her keys?" A small smile curved his lips. "Because I have watched you for years, Alina. You cry when no one is looking, then you wipe your face and go back to work with a softer voice instead of a harder one. You forgive people who don't deserve it, but you don't let them walk over others. You are stubborn, but not selfish. And you are very bad at giving up." His eyes warmed. "My kingdom would be safer with a queen who can't stop caring even when she desperately wants to." Her cheeks burned. "You watched me." In dreams, in reflections, in small, stolen moments. He nodded toward the darkened window. "Our worlds overlap in places. I wasn't allowed to speak to you before tonight, but I saw enough to know you were exactly what we needed." It should have felt invasive, creepy even. And yet, the way he said it didn't feel like an obsession. It felt like someone who had been drowning for a very long time and had finally spotted a lighthouse on a distant shore. "What about what I need?" she asked, more sharply than she intended. Elias' gaze didn't flinch. "Tell me." The simple invitation loosened something in her chest, something she wasn't used to showing. She thought of all the times she'd swallowed her own needs because someone else was hurting more. "I need my family safe," she said first, because that was the one truth she knew without doubt. "I need my brother to go to college without worrying he'll have to drop out to pay bills. I need my mom to sit down without checking the clock, just once, and not panic about missing a shift." The emissary tilted his shadowed head. "Done," he said. "Their future can be written into the contract, protected by law on both sides of the veil." Alina took a deeper breath. "I need to matter, not just as a tool, not as some magical bandage for your throne. I'm not doing this just to be a symbol or a pretty crown on your head while you make all the decisions." Elia's expression softened into something painfully sincere. "I don't want a puppet queen. I want a partner who can tell me when I'm wrong, who can argue with me when I want revenge instead of justice, who can stand in rooms where everyone fears me and not be afraid to say, 'No, this isn't right.'" He stepped closer, his voice gentling. "If you say yes, you will have a voice, a strong one, not because the contract says so, but because I will listen. I promise you that, as king, as whatever else I may become to you." Her pulse skipped at the weight behind those last words. "And what if I fall in love with someone else, or don't love you at all?" she asked, blunt and nervous. Something flickered in his eyes, hesitation, maybe even hurt, but he didn't look away. "You are not being asked to fall in love tonight. You are being asked to make a choice of duty and mercy. Love, if it comes, will come after in its own time or not at all. I will not force your heart." His voice dropped lower. "But I will protect it. That much I can swear." The emissary's presence thickened, as if absorbing the promise. "The contract binds your safety to his honor," he confirmed. "Harm done to you by his hand would tear his power to ashes. We do not shackle queens only to suffer them. We learned that lesson once. We will not repeat it." Alina exhaled slowly. A strange calm threaded through her fear, like the eye of a storm. None of this erased her doubts. But beneath the anxiety was a quiet understanding. Ordinary life hadn't exactly been simple either. It had just been smaller. Elias reached to the nightstand and pulled out a folder she hadn't noticed before, thick with papers and embossed seals. "These are the human-side documents," he said. "Marriage license, legal will, transfer of funds. If we sign them, your family's future is secure regardless of what happens to us tonight." She took the folder, fingers brushing his. A gentle tingle ran up her arm, not painful, just aware. She opened the file and scanned the pages. They were dense but clear, no hidden traps, no strange clauses. Large sums set aside in trust, a paid-off apartment, a scholarship fund. "Who has this kind of money?" she murmured. "A king who has been investing since your ancestors farmed by candlelight," the emissary said dryly. She almost laughed. Of course. Her eyes stung as she reached the line where her name waited next to spouse. It looked absurd and completely real at the same time. Can I ask one more thing? She said quietly, looking up. Elias nodded. Anything. If I do this, if I say yes, promise me we won't just rule from some gloomy high tower watching people like pieces on a board. Promise me we'll actually try to make things better. For humans, for vampires, for whatever else is out there. For the first time since the emissary appeared, something like fire lit in Elias' expression, a fierce, hopeful flame. That is exactly why I need you, he said. Not to maintain what is, but to change what should never have been. Our world is tired of fear. It needs a different kind of story. The emissary murmured, almost to himself, a king who longs for peace, a queen who demands it. Interesting. Alina held his gaze another long moment, searching for any hint of deception. Instead, she saw a mirror of her own exhaustion with helplessness. The same anger at unnecessary suffering. The same ache to do something that truly mattered. Okay, she whispered, her decision settling into place like a final puzzle piece. Then let's write a different story. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she signed her name on the first line. Alina Rivera. The ink seemed to shimmer for a second, as if reacting to something only it could feel. She moved to the next page, signed again, and again. Each stroke of the pen felt heavier, more permanent, like laying bricks in an invisible bridge between worlds. When she was done, she set the pen down with a soft click. It is witnessed, the emissary said, his voice echoing strangely. A faint pulse of red light ran along the edges of the papers, then faded. The human half is sealed. Elias took the pen, his fingers elegant and sure, and signed his own name across the final page. But when he finished the last stroke, the ink flared crimson instead of black, and the room vibrated faintly. The emissary straightened, his shadow stretching long across the floor. Now comes the other half, he intoned. The vow in the language of night, the bond no human court can see, but every shadow will obey. Alina's throat tightened. She thought the papers would make it feel final, but this felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into a valley filled with unknown stars. Elias stepped toward her, holding out his hand once more. There was no red glow now, no theatrics. Just his palm, open and steady, and the quiet intensity in his gaze. We can still stop, he said softly. You can keep the papers, walk away with a new life, and I will take the war that follows on my own shoulders. No one will blame you. She swallowed. Would you blame me? His answer came without hesitation. Never. The sincerity in that single word wrapped around her like a fragile shield. Her fear didn't vanish, but it sharpened into something clearer, cleaner. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing anyway. She reached out and placed her hand in his again. Then, she said, voice trembling but determined, teach me the words of your world, Elias. Let's finish what we started. The emissary's eyes glowed faintly from the corner, as ancient symbols began to swirl faintly on the walls like ink coming alive. Very well, queen-to-be, he murmured. Repeat after your king, and understand, every word you speak from this point on will shape not just your own future, but the future of every beating heart that sleeps beneath our sky tonight. And as Elias drew her closer, their joined hands framed by symbols of a language older than history, Alina realized that the real choice wasn't about vampires or crowns at all. It was about who she was willing to become, for the sake of people who would never know her name. The first phrase of the ancient vow rose from Elias' lips, soft and solemn. And with her heart pounding and her world tilting, Alina opened her mouth to answer, not yet knowing that one of the next words she spoke would shatter his carefully built walls. and reveal a secret even the vampire king himself had been afraid to face.